Son takes justice against a corrupt cop for his mother's death. In this story, we dive into the strange and mysterious events surrounding a local diner in the South Bronx. What seemed like a normal family business soon turned into a web of crime, deceit, and corruption. This tale involves Mary Collins, her son Tommy, and a dangerous extortion scheme that led to deadly consequences. As we dig deeper into the twists and turns of this unsettling case, you'll uncover secrets that were hidden in plain sight. If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button to stay updated with more shocking true events. Let's jump right into the story and see how it all unfolded. The South Bronx neighborhood of New York City has long been celebrated for its vibrant, close-knit community and the resilience of its small, family-owned businesses. Among these was Mary's Diner, a beloved establishment that stood at 856 Westchester Avenue, where it intersected with Jackson Avenue. For nearly 2 decades, the diner was a beacon of warmth and determination, embodying the American dream through the tenacity of its founder, Mary Collins. Her story was one of perseverance, hope, and the pursuit of opportunity, leaving an indelible mark on her community. Mary Collins, born Mary O'Brien on March 12, 1977 in Boston, Massachusetts, was the daughter of Irish immigrants who instilled in her a strong work ethic and unyielding resolve. In 2003, at the age of 26, Mary moved to New York City with her 1-year-old son, Thomas "Tommy" Collins, in search of a better future. Determined to create a stable life for her small family, she invested her entire savings of $47,000 and secured a small business loan of $125,000 to open Mary's Diner in April 2004. At just 27, Mary transformed the ground floor of a modest 3-story brick building from 1951 into a 200-square-foot diner adorned with large, inviting windows and a neon sign that soon became a neighborhood icon. Mary's Diner quickly earned a stellar reputation in the community for its affordable, home-style meals and a unique Irish-American fusion menu, drawing in a loyal customer base. Local workers, residents, and passers-by filled the diner daily, creating a lively and welcoming atmosphere. Mary herself became a familiar face behind the counter, known for her warm demeanor and genuine care for her customers. The diner employed 7 staff members, including 2 full-time cooks, 3 waitresses, 1 dishwasher, and Mary, who tirelessly managed day-to-day operations. Among the employees was Miguel Rodriguez, a Puerto Rican immigrant and talented head cook who had been with the diner since its inception and played an integral role in its success. Tommy Collins, born on February 8, 2003, grew up surrounded by the hustle and bustle of the diner. By the time he was 16 in 2019, Tommy had become, on October 3, 2019, Sergeant Frank Darcy, a seasoned officer newly transferred to the 41st Precinct, made his first visit to Mary's Diner. Security footage from nearby businesses documented his arrival at approximately 2:15 p.m. in his NYPD patrol car, unit number 4109. Clad in full uniform, Darcy entered the diner and remained inside for 47 minutes. At first glance, the visit appeared routine, an officer making a community stop at a local establishment. However, this seemingly benign encounter would mark the beginning of a chain of events that unraveled the life Mary Collins had worked so hard to build, ultimately exposing a dark web of corruption within South Bronx law enforcement. The initial interaction between Mary Collins and Sergeant Darcy occurred at 2:27 p.m. on that same day, captured by the diner's own security cameras. The footage, later reviewed as part of an ongoing investigation, showed the officer engaging Mary in what appeared to be a serious conversation lasting 22 minutes. Details of this meeting were later corroborated by personal notes found in Mary's possession after her death. According to these notes, Darcy introduced what he called a protection arrangement, which demanded weekly payments of $500 in exchange for safeguarding the diner against potential issues that might arise. This arrangement was not framed as optional, but as a necessary step to ensure the business's smooth operation. Bank records from Mary's Chase account showed that she withdrew $500 the following day, October 4th, 2019. Despite this, Mary chose not to comply with the demand. Her refusal marked the beginning of a calculated campaign of harassment and intimidation. By October 5th, a mere 2 days after Darcy's visit, the New York City Department of Health dispatched Inspector Marcus Rodriguez to conduct an unscheduled inspection of Mary's Diner, The inspector's report listed an alarming 12 health code violations, including rodent activity in food storage areas, improperly sanitized surfaces, unsafe storage of cleaning materials, and food kept at incorrect temperatures. This abrupt spike in violations was starkly at odds with the diner's previous record. Only 3 months earlier, on July 15, 2019, Mary's Diner had undergone a routine health inspection and was cited for just 2 minor infractions, maintaining a respectable B grade. The sudden deterioration in health code compliance raised questions, but Mary's notes reveal she believed it was retaliation for her refusal to submit to Darcy's demands. Her suspicions were validated as further incidents of harassment began to unfold. Between October 5th and October 12th, 2019, the diner became the target of relentless scrutiny from various city agencies. Building inspectors visited the property 3 times within a single week, each time citing different minor infractions. Fire marshals conducted 2 surprise checks, questioning the diner's adherence to fire codes. A workplace safety inspector flagged irrelevant concerns, and even Mary's customers were not spared. Regular patrons reported receiving parking tickets shortly after dining at her establishment, with a deeper investigation revealed a more sinister twist. Security footage from October 12, 2019, just a day before the reported illnesses, captured 2 unidentified men entering the diner at 9:47 p.m., shortly before closing. The pair stayed for approximately 12 minutes and were seen using the restroom facilities. Their behavior, though seemingly innocuous, aroused suspicion when viewed in the context of the subsequent allegations. Experts speculated that the men might have tampered with the diner's environment to fabricate the food poisoning claims, potentially as part of a broader scheme to exert pressure on Mary Collins. Financial records from Mary's Chase bank account indicated that starting October 14, 2019, she began making consistent cash withdrawals of $500 every Monday. This pattern of withdrawals was not unique to Mary's Diner. Forensic accountants discovered similar trends among neighboring businesses, including Garcia's Bodega, Wong's Chinese Restaurant, Pete's Pizza, and Liberty Pharmacy. Each establishment, located within a few blocks of Mary's Diner, showed evidence of weekly withdrawals in similar amounts. This alarming consistency suggested a coordinated extortion effort targeting local businesses. Further analysis estimated that at least 20 businesses in the immediate area were subjected to these weekly payments, amounting to an underground economy generating roughly $10,000 every week. Investigators later linked these payments to Sergeant Darcy's financial activities. Bank records obtained during the investigation revealed regular cash deposits into Darcy's personal accounts, ranging from $3,500 to $4,000 per week. These deposits were carefully dispersed across various ATMs throughout the Bronx, with no location being used consecutively. This deliberate attempt to avoid detection pointed to a well-organized extortion scheme operating within the precinct. As the months progressed, the demands on Mary Collins became increasingly burdensome. By November 2019, the amount Sergeant Darcy demanded had risen from $500 to $750 per week. Mary's bank statements from this period reflect the growing financial strain. Withdrawals remained consistent at $500 throughout October, but by November, the amounts began to climb. On November 4th, Mary withdrew $600, followed by $700 on November 11th, and finally, $750 on November 18th. Each increase coincided with Darcy's escalating threats, leaving Mary with little choice but to comply to protect her business and employees. The extortion scheme painted a troubling picture of systemic corruption. The network of payments, the targeted harassment, and the deliberate escalation of financial demands underscored the power dynamics at play. Mary's resilience in the face of these challenges was remarkable, but the mounting pressure was taking a visible toll. The events of October and November were not isolated incidents, but part of a larger conspiracy that would soon begin to unravel, with Mary's Diner at the center of a case that would expose the extent of corruption in the South Bronx. Determined to protect her business, later that same evening at 9:42 p.m., the diner's security cameras recorded an ominous development. Sergeant Frank Darcy entered the establishment through the front door. By this time, the diner was nearly empty, with only 2 customers finishing their meals. The footage showed them leaving 3 minutes later at 9:45 p.m., leaving Mary and her teenage son Tommy alone inside. Tommy, as usual, was busy cleaning the kitchen while Mary tended to the cash register and prepared to close for the night. The final moments before tragedy unfolded were chillingly documented by the security system. At 9:47 p.m., Darcy approached the counter where Mary was counting the day's receipts. The footage captured what appeared to be an increasingly heated exchange between the two. Although the system lacked audio, the intensity of their body language was unmistakable. As the clock struck 9:48 p.m., the tension between them reached a breaking point, a moment that would forever alter the lives of the Collins family and shake the South Bronx community to its core. The tension inside Mary's diner reached a breaking point at 9:51 p.m. on November 15, 2019. Security footage captured Sergeant Darcy stepping behind the counter, entering a space that was clearly off-limits to customers. 1 minute later, at 9:52 p.m., the situation escalated into a physical altercation between Darcy and Mary Collins. The footage showed Mary attempting to defend herself, but the confrontation turned violent. Just 37 seconds after the struggle began, Mary fell backward with tremendous force, her head striking the sharp corner of the stainless steel prep counter. At 9:53 p.m., Mary's 16-year-old son, Tommy, emerged from the kitchen in response to the commotion. Within seconds, he witnessed his mother lying motionless on the floor. Darcy, appearing visibly shaken, pulled out his cell phone and made a call to 911 at 9:45 p.m. The urgency of the situation was undeniable, but the events that followed raised as many questions as they answered. The NYPD incident report filed under case number 19-4178 detailed the emergency response. Officers from the 41st Precinct arrived at the diner at 9:59 p.m., just over 6 minutes after the call was made. EMS personnel arrived shortly after at 10:03 p.m. Despite their efforts, Mary Collins was pronounced dead at the scene at 10:17 p.m. The medical examiner's preliminary assessment identified the cause of death as a severe cerebral hemorrhage resulting from blunt force trauma to the back of her head. Detective James Wilson of the 41st Precinct's Homicide Division was assigned to lead the investigation. His report, submitted the following day, characterized Mary's death as accidental. This conclusion rested on several factors: Darcy's account of the incident, security footage showing the fall, and the lack of overt evidence indicating deliberate physical harm. The report emphasized that Tommy Collins had been in the kitchen during the altercation and did not witness the events leading to his mother's fall. The autopsy, performed by Dr. Michael Harper on November 17th, revealed additional details that complicated the case. While the primary cause of death was consistent with blunt force trauma to the occipital region, the examination also documented minor bruising on Mary's arms, injuries often associated with defensive movements. Toxicology results showed no alcohol or drugs in her system, further ruling out any impairment on her part. Despite these findings, the official narrative remained unchanged. Detective Wilson's report concluded that Mary lost her balance during a heated conversation, resulting in a fatal accident. The case was closed on November 20th, 2019, just 5 days after Mary's death. This rapid resolution was highly unusual for a case involving disputed circumstances and left many questions unanswered. At the time, the existence of Mary's meticulously gathered evidence, stored in a safe deposit box, remained unknown to authorities. Tommy Collins, unaware of the evidence his mother had collected, was left grappling with the sudden and devastating loss. The swift closure of the investigation cast a shadow over the official findings, leaving a sense of injustice that would linger long after the diner's doors were shuttered. The death of Mary Collins in November 2019 effectively silenced the corruption investigation she had initiated. Detective Sarah Martinez, unable to obtain the documentation Mary had promised for their meeting on November 18th, officially closed the preliminary inquiry, citing the complainant's untimely death. However, Mary's teenage son, Tommy Collins, refused to let the matter rest. Recognizing the futility of pursuing justice through official channels, he took it upon himself to uncover the truth behind his mother's death and the criminal network she had exposed. In the weeks following the tragedy, Tommy began a covert investigation into Sergeant Darcy's activities. Entries in his personal diary, later discovered in his school locker, provided a window into his determination and resourcefulness. To conceal his efforts, Tommy used a smartphone app disguised as a homework planner to record his observations. Over 6 weeks, from late November through December 2019, he carefully documented Darcy's routines, noting his frequent stops along Westchester Avenue and other parts of the South Bronx. These stops, often lasting 15 to 20 minutes, involved collecting payments from local businesses, a pattern that Tommy suspected was linked to the extortion scheme that had devastated his family. Tommy's investigation gained momentum when he secured a job as a busboy at O'Malley's Bar on 163rd Street, a known hangout for Darcy after his shifts. On December 3, 2019, using a falsified ID provided by a classmate, Tommy submitted his application and was quickly hired. At just 16 years old, Tommy had cleverly disguised himself as an 18-year-old to infiltrate the establishment. Ellen Murphy, the bar's manager, tax records from 2018 to 2019 revealed that Raymond Ray Sullivan, the mastermind behind the South Bronx's criminal network, had ownership stakes in 17 local businesses. These enterprises, ranging from construction firms to retail outlets, served as legitimate fronts for laundering profits derived from illegal gambling, narcotics trafficking, and other illicit activities. Among these holdings, O'Malley's Bar on 163rd Street played a pivotal role as a hub for coordinating the network's operations. The bar became a meeting point for Sullivan's associates and Sergeant Darcy, facilitating the seamless flow of information and money through their tightly controlled system. From December 2019 through January 2020, Tommy Collins, working undercover at O'Malley's, documented a series of late-night meetings between Darcy and Sullivan's lieutenants. These gatherings typically took place on Tuesday nights, with Darcy arriving punctually at 10:45 p.m. and staying for about an hour. Darcy's primary contact during these meetings was James "Jimmy" Mitchell, Sullivan's chief financial operator. Mitchell handled the weekly payment records from the extortion scheme and issued updated collection quotas for the businesses under their control. The precision and organization of these transactions underscored the sophistication of Sullivan's operation. While working at O'Malley's, Tommy overheard snippets of conversations that revealed the deeper mechanics of the criminal enterprise. He learned that the scheme extended far beyond basic extortion. Local businesses were not only paying protection money, but were also required to falsify their daily receipts, incorporating the proceeds of illegal activities into their books. This tactic effectively laundered dirty money, making it indistinguishable from legitimate revenue. The scale of this operation suggested a web of fraudulent transactions that insulated the key players from scrutiny while placing an undue burden on the businesses forced to participate. Cell phone records later obtained from Darcy's service provider painted a damning picture of his involvement. Between November 2019 and January 2020, Darcy exchanged over 200 text messages and 47 phone calls with 5 numbers linked to Sullivan's network. The timing of these communications was highly incriminating, often coinciding with collection periods or directly following the Tuesday night meetings at O'Malley's. These records showed that Darcy was deeply entrenched in the operation, serving as a critical liaison between Sullivan's organization and the businesses being exploited. In stark contrast, Tommy's cell phone records during the same period showed no activity that could compromise his covert investigation. He was acutely aware of the importance of operational security and avoided any communications that might draw attention to his efforts. His only regular contacts were his aunt, Rosa Vasquez, and a few close school friends, preserving the appearance of a normal teenage life. Tommy's methodical approach allowed him to continue gathering evidence without arousing suspicion, even as a critical breakthrough in Tommy's investigation came on January 15, 2020, at O'Malley's Bar, where his aunt Rosa Vasquez worked as a dishwasher. Using her iPhone's voice memo feature, Rosa discreetly recorded an inebriated conversation between Sergeant Darcy and his patrol partner, Officer Michael Green. The 18-minute recording, time-stamped late that evening, captured Darcy's candid admissions about his manipulative tactics. At precisely 11:27 p.m., Darcy could be heard boasting, "These immigrant shop owners, they're too scared to count. I tell Sullivan it's $300, pocket the rest, and everyone stays happy." This chilling remark exposed not only his exploitation of vulnerable business owners, but also his calculated betrayal of Sullivan's trust. More damning, however, was Darcy's admission about the events at Mary's Diner on November 15, 2019. At 11:34 p.m., Darcy confessed, "The stupid woman thought she could go to internal affairs. One push, that's all it took. Accident report, case closed." The cavalier tone in which he recounted the fatal confrontation with Mary Collins sent shockwaves through Rosa and Tommy, when they reviewed the recording. This statement solidified what Tommy had long suspected. His mother's death was no tragic accident, but a deliberate act of violence covered up under the guise of law enforcement authority. Armed with this incriminating evidence, Tommy began compiling a comprehensive dossier. He retrieved his mother's original payment ledgers from her safe deposit box, meticulously cross-referencing them against Sullivan's financial records. Mary's ledgers showed weekly payments of $500, while Sullivan's books consistently recorded only $300 per week from Mary's Diner. This discrepancy, mirrored across all 20 businesses involved in the protection racket, painted a clear picture of Darcy's systematic skimming. The documentation laid bare Darcy's betrayal, not only of the businesses he extorted, but also of the criminal network he ostensibly served. On January 17, 2020, Tommy decided to take a bold and calculated step. He compiled all the evidence, including the payment ledgers, Rose's damning recording, and additional observations about Darcy's collection patterns, into a neatly organized manila envelope. Rather than entrust the evidence to law enforcement, whom he had learned to distrust, he chose to deliver it directly to Sullivan's organization. Under the cover of darkness, Tommy deposited the envelope into the night deposit box of Sullivan's legitimate front, the West Bronx Property Management Office on Jerome Avenue. This act was as much a strategic gamble as it was a desperate move for justice. By exposing Darcy's double-dealing to Sullivan, Tommy aimed to exploit the criminal hierarchy's strict code of loyalty. He knew Sullivan would not take kindly to Darcy stealing from the operation, particularly when it jeopardized the net. Mary Collins' ledgers were an especially damning piece of the puzzle. Each entry was precisely dated, detailing the weekly $500 payments she had made under the extortion scheme. When cross-referenced with Sullivan's records, it became clear that only $300 per week from her payments had reached the organization. This discrepancy was consistently repeated across the other businesses in the network, substantiating the claims of systematic theft. Rose's recording provided the narrative context, capturing Darcy's drunken admission of not only his financial deceit, but also his chilling role in Mary's death. Together, the evidence painted a picture of greed, corruption, and murder. Within hours of receiving the package on January 18, 2020, Sullivan mobilized his trusted inner circle. Cell phone records later showed that between 9:30 a.m. and 11 a.m., Sullivan made several calls to key associates. These conversations likely detailed the extent of Darcy's betrayal and set plans in motion to address it. Surveillance footage from various locations in the Bronx corroborated this, showing known Sullivan operatives engaging in what appeared to be counter-surveillance on Darcy throughout the day. The systematic nature of their movements suggested a well-organized response aimed at both information gathering and potentially eliminating the threat Darcy now posed to the operation's integrity. The situation reached its grim conclusion on January 25, 2020. At 6:17 a.m., an NYPD dispatch received a report from a sanitation worker about an abandoned vehicle in Hunts Point's industrial area. Responding officers discovered a 2018 Ford Taurus registered to Sergeant Frank Darcy, parked in the lot behind the defunct Allied Chemical Facility on Tiffany Street. Inside, Darcy's lifeless body was slumped in the driver's seat. The scene bore the hallmarks of an execution, with the medical examiner noting 2 gunshot wounds, one to the right temple and the other to the back of the head. His Smith & Wesson M&P 9mm service weapon was found in his right hand. The official report classified Darcy's death as a suspected suicide, but the evidence told a more complicated story. The positioning of the entry wounds and the weapon raised significant doubts about the plausibility of self-infliction. While the NYPD maintained an air of ambiguity, Sullivan's operatives had likely delivered their own brand of justice. The swift and violent resolution to Darcy's betrayal underscored the dangers of crossing a criminal empire as entrenched and ruthless as Sullivan's. For Tommy Collins, the outcome was a chilling testament to the power dynamics he had. The NYPD's investigation into the events surrounding Sergeant Frank Darcy's death was led by Detective Robert Thompson of the 41st Precinct. The investigation followed a clear timeline of Darcy's final movements, piecing together crucial evidence that seemed to support the initial conclusion of suicide. According to security footage, Darcy was seen leaving O'Malley's bar at approximately 11:42 p.m. on January 24, 2020. From there, his police cruiser's GPS tracker revealed that he made several stops throughout the South Bronx before eventually arriving at the Hunts Point industrial area around 2:15 a.m. His vehicle was found parked in a location deliberately obscured from the nearest security camera, a detail that investigators believe to be indicative of intentional positioning. The investigation uncovered several key factors that aligned with the theory of suicide. Psychological services records indicated that Darcy had scheduled but failed to attend 3 counseling sessions in the month leading up to his death. Additionally, forensic analysis of his personal computer revealed recent searches related to depression, mental health struggles, and methods of self-harm. His financial records painted a similar picture of distress, showing significant withdrawals from his accounts in the days before his death, with a particularly large sum of $27,000 being withdrawn on January 23rd. These findings, coupled with his actions in the final days of his life, seem to corroborate the theory of suicide despite the troubling circumstances surrounding his death. Despite these apparent signs of personal turmoil, the investigation was complicated by the peculiar circumstances surrounding the note received by Tommy Collins just days after Darcy's death. On January 27, 2020, a handwritten note was delivered to Mary's Diner by an anonymous courier. Although Tommy immediately burned the note after reading it, he reportedly relayed its contents to others. The note stated that Mary's Diner would no longer be required to make any protection payments, signaling the end of the extortion racket that had plagued the establishment. Furthermore, it claimed that Ray Sullivan's organization would continue to ensure the diner's safety. This mysterious note was never found by the authorities, and there was no physical trace of it in the police records, leaving its authenticity and intent open to speculation. Following these events, there was a noticeable shift in the local business climate, particularly for Mary's Diner and other establishments in the South Bronx. Financial records from early 2020 revealed a sharp uptick in profitability for these businesses, particularly in the first quarter of the year. The ballistics analysis of Sergeant Darcy's death provided several key insights into the circumstances surrounding the incident. Both gunshot wounds were confirmed to have been inflicted by his own service weapon, fired at close range. The forensic unit concluded that the gunshot residue patterns were consistent with a self-inflicted wound, reinforcing the suicide theory. However, the trajectory of the second bullet raised questions, as it deviated from typical patterns seen in most suicide cases, though experts noted that it wasn't entirely out of the realm of possibility for a self-inflicted injury. These unusual findings did little to alter the overall conclusion of suicide, though they hinted at a deeper complexity to the situation. In the months that followed Darcy's death, the NYPD's Internal Affairs Bureau initiated a brief review of his recent activities. The investigation uncovered numerous irregular financial transactions that suggested a history of misconduct, but there was no definitive link made between Darcy and any organized criminal groups. Despite these findings, the Internal Affairs investigation was closed on March 15, 2020, and all related documents were sealed as per the department's standard protocol. The lack of further action left many questions unanswered, particularly regarding Darcy's possible involvement in the protection racket or the larger criminal syndicates operating in the area. Meanwhile, Ray Sullivan's criminal empire continued to flourish, albeit through more legitimate channels. His West Bronx property management company expanded its operations in 2020, acquiring new properties along Westchester Avenue. The business's growth was a direct reflection of his ability to maintain a low profile while expanding his influence within the community. Despite widespread rumors and some suspicions about his ties to organized crime, there was never an official investigation into his possible connection to either Sergeant Darcy's death or the extortion scheme that had plagued the South Bronx. As for Tommy Collins, he quietly took over the management of Mary's Diner, carrying on his mother's legacy and adhering to the same business practices she had established. The diner, now free from the weekly protection payments, saw a slight but steady improvement in profitability. Tommy remained focused on running the diner, but his own investigation into the corrupt network that had affected his family remained an unspoken part of his life. The details of that investigation, however, never saw the light of day, and the true extent of the criminal activities surrounding his mother's death remained buried beneath the surface. The case of Mary Collins and her family serves as a chilling reminder of the hidden dangers that can lurk beneath the surface of everyday life. It shows how corruption can infiltrate even the most unsuspecting places and the lengths some will go to for power and control. Mary's tragic death and the web of crime that followed highlight the need for vigilance and the courage to stand up against injustice, no matter the cost. Thank you for joining us to uncover this unsettling story. If you found it compelling, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to stay updated on more true stories like this. Your support helps us bring these hidden truths to light. Stay aware, stay safe, and we'll be back with more shocking tales soon.